I was sitting at my apartment balcony in Brooklyn, the hum of the city below blending with the faint aroma of my morning coffee. My silk blouse felt cool against my skin, the sunlight catching just right on the golden threads of my bracelet, a gift from my grandmother years ago, one that always made me feel grounded. My phone buzzed on the glass table, a name flashing across the screen that I wasn't ready to see. My brother, Jason. I hesitated before answering, letting the ringing fade into voicemail. Memories I'd tried so hard to lock away resurfaced like ghosts. The trip. That cursed family vacation he had insisted on inviting him. My ex. The anger, the embarrassment, the sense of betrayal that had made me refuse to go, even when I'd wanted to spend time with Mom and Dad. Now, years later, everything was different. I'd built a life that was mine. One they couldn't touch, one they didn't even know existed. My career was taking off, my independence was real, and yet, hearing Jason's voice, or the idea of that trip, made my chest tighten just a little. The voicemail was simple, almost casual, but loaded with implications. Emily, I think you should know, the trip's off. Call me. A slow, ironic smile tugged at my lips. Funny how life had a way of giving me exactly what I'd refused on my terms. I sipped my coffee and stared at the skyline, feeling both anticipation and quiet satisfaction. I remember that summer like it was yesterday. I was 22, fresh out of college, filled with dreams and insecurities, and yet I'd never felt so small in my own family's living room. Jason had that smug grin, the one that always made me want to punch him, and sitting across from him was Ryan, my ex, the one I thought I'd finally escaped. I don't see why you're making such a big deal, Jason said, leaning back in the faded armchair. It's just a family trip. He's not going to ruin everything. I felt my stomach twist. My hands were clammy, clutching the edges of my chair. You don't get it, I said, voice trembling despite my effort to sound calm. I can't, seeing him there. I can't pretend everything's fine. Mom and Dad exchanged looks that made me want to disappear into the floorboards. But it was Jason's dismissive smirk that cut the deepest. He didn't see the fear, the hurt. All he saw was control, a way to force me into a corner. I sank back and noticed the bracelet on my wrist, the one Grandma had given me when I was 16. Remember, Emmy, she'd said softly. You have your own path. Don't let anyone else walk it for you. I gripped it tight. That small piece of gold was suddenly everything. Strength, clarity, permission to say no. I finally stood, my voice firmer now. I'm not going. Silence fell. Jason's smirk faltered. Mom frowned, but I couldn't care anymore. I had to protect myself. I had to choose me, even if it meant standing alone. That decision was terrifying, but it was liberating. I walked out of that living room with a lump in my throat and a spark in my chest. I didn't know yet how, but I promised myself I'd prove that my worth wasn't tied to anyone's approval, not even my family's. From that moment, independence wasn't just a goal. It became my lifeline. And little did they know, I was just beginning to build the life that would one day make them stare in disbelief. After that summer, I packed up my life into 2 suitcases and left my hometown behind, determined to make something of myself on my own terms. New York City was loud, chaotic, and unforgiving, but it was exactly what I needed. Every corner, every subway rumble, every buzzing streetlight became a part of my rhythm. I found a small apartment in Brooklyn, the kind with creaky floors and a balcony that overlooked a brick wall painted with faded graffiti. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I spent hours at my tiny desk, sketching designs, drafting business plans, and sending cold emails that rarely got responses. Some nights, I cried into my pillow, wondering if I'd made a mistake. But I wore my grandmother's bracelet as a talisman, a reminder that I was walking my own path. Then I met Olivia Parker, a seasoned designer in the interior architecture world, who saw something in me that no one else had. Emily, she said over a latte one rainy afternoon, you've got vision. You just need to trust it. Her mentorship became my compass. She introduced me to clients, guided me through contracts, and most importantly, made me believe that my talent had value. The early months were grueling. I spent 14-hour days learning software, negotiating deals, and convincing skeptical clients that I was capable. There were days I questioned myself, nights I felt invisible, but then a breakthrough came. My first major client, a boutique hotel that wanted a complete redesign. I remember the feeling, the flutter in my chest, the thrill of seeing my designs come to life. That small win ignited a fire I hadn't realized was burning inside me. One success led to another. I quietly grew my network, each project boosting my confidence and my bank account. I learned to navigate subtle gender biases, to assert myself in rooms where I was the youngest person by decades, and to celebrate small victories, like closing a deal over a breakfast meeting while noticing my chipped nail polish, a small, grounding detail that reminded me of who I was. Through it all, I shared almost nothing with my family. I posted modest updates online, nothing that revealed the scale of my achievements. They thought I was managing a small, fledgling career while living paycheck to paycheck. The truth? I was thriving, building a business that was about to change my life, and soon theirs. Every day, as I walked past the skyline, feeling the hum of the city around me, I held on to the quiet satisfaction that I had turned a painful refusal into the foundation of my success. They would never see it coming, and that thought made me smile with a mixture of triumph and serenity. The day they arrived, I waited calmly in my office, a space I had meticulously curated over the years. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, highlighting the soft cream walls, the sleek mid-century desk, and the art I had collected on trips I'd taken alone. My apartment was on the top floor of a converted loft building in Soho, filled with plants, elegant furniture, and little personal touches, a testament to the life I had quietly built. Jason walked in first, his smug grin now replaced with a flicker of unease. Mom followed, clutching her purse like a shield, and Dad trailed behind, his brow furrowed with cautious curiosity. They expected the Emily they had always underestimated, a struggling, timid version of me, someone they could pity or quietly patronize. I smiled, a calm, measured smile. "Hi," I said, my voice smooth, almost teasing in its serenity. "Welcome to my office." They looked around, slowly taking in the details. The polished wood shelves lined with books on design and business. The framed awards and certificates on the wall. The sleek, modern workstation where my laptop hummed quietly, displaying project after project I had quietly completed. I let them absorb it. I let them stew in their assumptions. Jason finally cleared his throat. "Emily, this isn't what I expected." "No, it isn't," I said, walking around my desk to stand before them. I didn't just refuse the trip because Ryan was invited. I refused it because I knew I was capable of more than being stuck in old dynamics. And I knew that one day, I'd be the one setting the terms. I handed them a portfolio of recent projects, luxury apartments, boutique hotels, office spaces, all designed and managed by me. Their jaws dropped. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Dad's eyes widened in disbelief. Jason's smirk vanished entirely, replaced by a mixture of guilt and awe. And in case you're wondering about finances, I continued, my voice steady. The funding I had set aside for that trip, it wasn't just enough for a vacation. It funded my business expansion. The boutique I've just acquired, the contracts I've signed, they're all part of the empire I'm building. And yes, it's entirely mine. They stood frozen, staring at me, their disbelief palpable. Mom whispered, almost to herself, "Emily, I had no idea." I nodded, letting the silence stretch, savoring it. Not for revenge, but for the power of finally being seen on my own terms. They had expected weakness. They had expected compliance. Instead, I had created a life they couldn't touch, a success they hadn't imagined. Jason finally spoke, his voice small. I didn't know you were capable of all this." I smiled softly. And that's why I didn't need to go on the trip. I had my own journey to take, one that didn't involve anyone else's approval. And the best part? I'm just getting started. The room was quiet, the kind of quiet that comes right before a storm, or, in this case, right after a truth has landed. I watched Jason fidget. Mom glanced at Dad with a mix of guilt and awe, and realized it was time to make one thing clear. The power had shifted. "I want to be honest with you," I began, my voice calm but unwavering. "I didn't refuse that trip just because of Ryan. I refused it because I needed to take control of my life. And now, if any of you want to be part of my life going forward, there are conditions." Jason looked up, half defensive, half curious. "Conditions?" "Yes," I said, letting my gaze sweep across them. "First, honesty. No more secrets, no more dismissing each other's feelings. We rebuild relationships based on truth, not assumptions. Second, accountability. Mom, Dad, that means you listen and you respect the boundaries I set. No pushing, no guilt trips. Jason, it means taking responsibility for your choices, not forcing others into discomfort because it suits you." I paused, letting my words sink in. Third, growth. If you want to reconnect with me, you have to work on yourselves, pursue your dreams, drop toxic habits, and stop clinging to old grudges. I care about you, but I won't let old patterns hold me back. Mom's eyes filled with tears, and she whispered, we didn't realize." "I know," I said gently. "And that's why I'm giving you a chance. But it has to be real. Actions speak louder than words." Jason finally nodded, a mix of shame and determination crossing his face. I can do that," he said quietly. "And so can you," I said to Mom and Dad. "We start fresh, but we start with respect and boundaries. Nothing else matters until we get that right." The tension in the room shifted. What had been disbelief and guilt transformed into reflection. For the first time in years, I saw them truly listening, really absorbing what I was saying. They weren't just my family anymore. They were people who had the opportunity to grow alongside me if they chose to meet me where I stood. And I stood tall. Not as a woman seeking revenge, but as a woman who had claimed her life, her voice, her value. I wasn't bending to old dynamics. I wasn't asking for permission. I was simply saying, this is who I am, and if you want to be part of it, you have to rise to the occasion. It was empowering, liberating, and strangely tender. Because finally, for the first time, they weren't seeing me as the girl who refused a trip. They were seeing me as Emily Carter's successor, strong, unapologetic, and ready to lead her own story. Weeks passed, and slowly, the change began. Jason took our conversation seriously, showing up for small gestures of accountability, helping around the apartment when he visited, listening without interrupting, even offering genuine apologies. Mom started checking in, not with demands or guilt, but with questions about my projects, genuinely curious about my life. Dad, ever the quiet observer, began to notice the little victories I celebrated, and he smiled, finally understanding the woman I had become. I watched them grow, and it was a strange, almost surreal feeling. I had expected bitterness or resentment, but what I found instead was the possibility of connection, redefined on my terms. Sitting on my balcony one evening, the city lights twinkling below, I held my grandmother's bracelet between my fingers. Its golden warmth reminded me of her words, "You have your own path. Don't let anyone else walk it for you." I had walked that path, stumbled a few times, struggled endlessly, but I had never wavered. The pain I endured, the nights I cried alone, the sacrifices I made, they had all led me here, to a life of autonomy, respect, and a family who was learning to see me as I truly was. I realized then that the trip I refused wasn't a loss at all. It had been a catalyst, a turning point that forced me to claim my independence. The funding I had saved, the business I had built, the life I had carved, it wasn't just success. It was freedom. And in that moment, I understood something profound. Strength isn't about proving someone wrong. It's about proving yourself right. It's about standing tall in the face of doubt, walking away from what doesn't serve you, and embracing the life you were always meant to lead. I smiled at the skyline, inhaling the crisp night air, and whispered to myself, I refused for a reason, I built for a reason, and now I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. The city hummed beneath me, and for the first time, I felt completely, unapologetically free.